Good evening, and welcome to Scotland at 7 on Monday, the 23rd of September. We have a slightly later start today, and this was largely to accommodate some of the late breaking news, which you'll hear particularly about the nurses' pay dispute. Also, a slightly shorter programme today as we have no guest in the studio, but I think you'll find that many of the stories tonight will stimulate discussion wherever you are. As ever, we start with the Ukraine update on this day 943 since the full-scale Russian invasion of the country. President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in the US on Sunday for a crucial visit to present Kyiv's plan to end 2.5 years of war with Russia. The Ukrainian president will present his proposals, which he calls a victory plan, to President Joe Biden, as well as presidential hopefuls Kamala Harris and Donald Trump, and will also attend sessions at the UN General Assembly. The visit comes after a summer of intense fighting, with Moscow advancing fast in eastern Ukraine and Kyiv holding on to swathes of Russia's Kursk region. It also comes as Kyiv has for weeks pressed the West to allow it to use delivered long-range weapons to strike targets deep inside Russia, so far to no avail. President Zelensky began his trip with a visit to a Pennsylvania ammunition factory that is producing one of the most critically needed munitions for Ukraine. UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy indicated that delicate negotiations with the White House to allow Ukraine to use Storm Shadow missiles inside Russia are ongoing, arguing it was a time for nerve and guts. Fake news websites registered in the UK and made to resemble trusted British outlets are allegedly spreading disinformation about Western companies operating in Ukraine. The suspected Russian propaganda operation has prompted calls by parliamentarians for a change in the law to force UK-registered news websites to reveal their ownership, as happens in the EU. At least 13 civilians were injured, including a 15-year-old boy, late on Sunday as a result of Russian airstrikes on the southeastern city of Zaporizhzhia, Ukrainian officials said today. Rescuers evacuated residents from several damaged apartment buildings, according to Ukraine's Interior Ministry. The ministry said that according to preliminary information, Russia used its KAB-guided aerial bombs to strike Zaporizhzhia. Russia launched new strikes in the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv, which hit high-rise apartment buildings, leaving at least 21 wounded in a second consecutive nighttime attack, authorities said. The bombs fell on Saturday night on the district of Shevchenkivsky, north of the center of Kharkiv, which is the second largest Ukrainian city, local governor Oleg Sinyobov said. A firefighter was killed by a Ukrainian drone in Russia-controlled Luhansk region in eastern Ukraine, the Russian Emergencies Ministry said on Sunday. Turning now to the latest from Israel and Gaza. At least 41,431 Palestinian people have been killed and 95,818 injured in Gaza since 7th of October, according to the Gaza Health Ministry. The United States has said the Israel Defense Forces raid and shutdown of the media network Al Jazeera's office in the West Bank city of Ramallah is inconsistent with US support for freedom of the press in the West Bank and all over the world. Israeli forces raided the office of Al Jazeera in the occupied West Bank on Sunday and issued a 45-day closure order, the Qatari broadcaster said. Beirut's southern suburbs are reportedly the latest target of Israel's military offensive in Lebanon. The Israeli military has just said the capital is a target, although few details are available at present. Lebanon's health minister Firas Abiad has said that 274 people have been killed in Israeli strikes on Lebanon, including 21 children and 31 women. More than 1,000 people have been injured, the health minister added. Abiad said Israeli airstrikes targeted hospitals, medical centers, and ambulances. At least 2 ambulances were damaged and destroyed, and 1 member of Lebanon's civil defense was injured by Israeli airstrikes today. The United Nations peacekeeping force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, issued a statement today in the afternoon, expressing grave concern for the safety of civilians in southern Lebanon amidst the most intense Israeli bombing campaign since last October, and urging the need for de-escalation from both Hezbollah and Israel. Senior UN officials have called for the immediate end to the conflict in Gaza on the eve of the UN General Assembly meeting in New York, saying in a statement, "These atrocities must end." Israel began strikes in the Bekaa Valley, carrying out 4 airstrikes in a neighborhood near Baalbek, East Bekaa, according to a Hezbollah source. A spokesperson for the Israeli military had told residents to evacuate the area some 2 hours before, warning that Israel would soon commence airstrikes against Hezbollah targets there. Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's Prime Minister, in his first statement since Israel launched a wave of deadly attacks across Lebanon, has told Israeli citizens that he had promised Israel would change the balance of power in the north, and that is what the IDF is doing. Lebanon is opening schools as emergency shelters amid, quote, heavy displacement of population caused by Israeli airstrikes. Responding to the displacement of people after Israel launched a string of airstrikes on southern and eastern Lebanon, the Interior Ministry has opened schools in Beirut, Tripoli, and in the east and the south to act as temporary refugee shelters. Heavy traffic and chaotic scenes have been reported as people try to flee. Najib Mikati, Lebanon's caretaker prime minister, has called Israel's wave of airstrikes a genocide in every sense of the word. Mikati made the comments at the start of a cabinet meeting in Beirut today, in which he said that Israel's airstrikes aim to destroy Lebanon's towns and villages. Mikati said that the Lebanese government was calling on the United Nations, the UN Security Council, and world nations to deter the aggression. Now to Britain, and the Labour Party conference in Liverpool moved into its second day today, with speeches by the Chancellor Rachel Reeves and the party's leader in Scotland, Anas Sarwar. Reeves' conference speech was preceded by several broadcast interviews this morning, in which he promised to end austerity, but just hours later refused to reverse her cuts to the winter fuel allowance, which SNP Westminster economy spokesperson Dave Doogan MP called the very definition of an austerity cut. A trade union motion at the conference to reverse the cuts to pensioners was blocked with Unite boss Sharon Graham saying that the Labour leadership was trying to silence the voice of pensioners. Last Wednesday, a poll by Survation found a majority of Scots, 56%, do not think the Labour government is acting in the best interests of Scotland, while just 15% do. The poll also found a majority, 51%, of Scots oppose Labour's cuts to winter fuel payments, and almost half of Labour's voters in Scotland, 44%, think Keir Starmer's government has failed to meet expectations. Anas Sarwar's speech made no mention of the winter fuel payment and simply pledged, quote, relentless positivity leading up to the 2026 Holyrood election. Kevin Stewart, MSP, responded, Anas Sarwar is content to defend the indefensible, whether that be the 2-child cap that is pushing 87,000 children into poverty, or the withdrawal of the winter fuel payment from 860,000 Scottish pensioners. Ian Murray and Anas Sarwar should also be explaining where the £150 million poverty fund they promised has gone. The SNP is the only party presenting a positive, hopeful vision for more prosperous Scotland, which we can only achieve with independence, he concluded. Uncertainty before Labour's first budget next month is weighing on the UK economy, according to 2 separate business surveys. The data company S&P Global said UK private sector activity growth slowed for the second consecutive month in September, affecting companies in the services and manufacturing industries. Some companies reported that clients were taking a wait-and-see approach to decision-making before the autumn budget, which is hitting investment plans, even as the Chancellor Rachel Reeves wants to encourage business investment to boost economic growth. The figures suggest Labour's emphasis on its poor inheritance from the previous Conservative administration and the need for a tough budget on 30th of October were weighing on the immediate outlook for many businesses. The S&P survey found the budget was by far the most cited concern among UK private sector firms. Export orders remained relatively subdued, and total overseas sales rose only marginally in September. A separate survey of manufacturers by the Confederation of British Industry, CBI, found that export order books in the 3 months to September were at their weakest since December 2020, during the first year of the COVID-19 pandemic and just before the UK signed the Brexit trade agreement. Its latest industrial trends report, which the CBI described as, quote, uniformly disappointing, total and export order books at manufacturers deteriorated in September. A net balance of minus 44% of manufacturers reported that their export order books were below normal this month, a deterioration compared with August when the reading was minus 22%. And now the nurses and government offered pay award. On the same day that nurses in Scotland accepted the Scottish Government's pay offer, the Royal College of Nursing in England has rejected the UK Government's offer of a 5.5% pay rise. Nurses in England rejected pay rises they were given for this year in a move that may lead to them starting striking again in pursuit of higher salaries. Their decision presents Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves and Wes Streeting with an unexpected headache over public spending, especially as it involves a group of frontline NHS staff who enjoy huge public respect and affection. It has raised the possibility that other health workers may feel emboldened by junior doctors receiving a 22% pay increase after a long campaign of strikes, that they will now seek a similar rise. The Royal College of Nursing, RCN, made clear that nurses expected a far higher award than 5.5%. Two-thirds of its 145,000 members in England who took part in a recent consultative ballot voted to reject that as too little. In a strongly worded criticism of the government, the RCN added that the nurses' rejection showed they disagreed with Minister's insistence that 5.5% was a fair amount. Labour had not ended the decade of neglect of nurses' incomes, it added. The union announced its decision while the Chancellor was giving her keynote speech at Labour's annual conference. In August, the Scottish Government offered nurses and healthcare staff across Scotland a pay increase of 5.5% that will ensure they have the best pay package in the UK. That offer was accepted today and will see an investment of more than £448 million in 2024 to 25 and will ensure almost 170,000 NHS Agenda for Change staff, including nurses, midwives, paramedics, allied health professionals, porters and others, benefit for the pay rise, which will be backdated to the 1st of April 2024. Julie Lamberth, RCN Scotland Board Chair, said, "We believe it was right that our members had their say on this offer." When he made the offer in August, Scottish Health Secretary Neil Gray said the package would ensure Scotland's nurses and NHS staff have the best pay package in the United Kingdom. Continuing story now, and Horizon IT problems and the Post Office. Thousands of post office operators have complained that they continue to suffer problems with the system at the heart of the Horizon IT scandal, with nearly all involving a financial shortfall. As the final phase of the inquiry into the faulty computer system began today, the results of a damning survey shows operators are still struggling with bugs in the system, that trust in the organisation is low, and that they believe compensation should be higher. Almost 98% of post office operators who participated in the survey as part of the inquiry into the IT scandal continue to encounter discrepancies with the system and have said the issue involved a financial shortfall. Nearly 70% of the respondents to two anonymous surveys, which were sent to 16,000 post office operators before the start of the final phase of the inquiry, said they had experienced an unexplained discrepancy on the Horizon system since January 2020. The inquiry heard that Nick Reed, the outgoing chief of the post office, due to give evidence this week, allegedly wanted the two post office operators appointed to the company's board removed and blocked them from meetings on issues including pay and bonuses. Saf Ismail was appointed to the post office board as a non-executive director in June 2021, along with a fellow post office operator Elliot Jacobs, in a move to repair relations and improve oversight as part of an attempt to overhaul the organisation and, quote, right the wrongs of the past. Ismail gave scathing testimony to the inquiry, saying that while the other non-executive directors on the board welcomed the new appointments, post office executives did not. Ismail said that Jane Davis, the former post office HR director, had told him that the chief executive was not happy with postmasters being on the board and that he wanted them off the board. The survey also found that post office operators from a minority ethnic background were more likely to have been threatened with suspension than those from a white background. The report shows that 8 post office operators said they had been suspended or threatened with suspension in the past 3 years after problems with discrepancies in the IT system. In total, 80 of more than 1,000 respondents said that they had been threatened with suspension by the post office in the past. However, the survey found that 12% of post office operators threatened with suspension were from an ethnic minority background, and 17 of those with an Asian British background. There are more than 7,000 independent operators, and an annual survey last year, which about 1,300 completed, found that 44% described their ethnic group as Asian, with 1% a mixed white and Asian background. Last year, documents released to campaigners revealed that lawyers investigating post office operators over the Horizon bugs used a racist term to categorize black workers. The document, which was published between 2008 and 2011, included the term Negroid types, along with Chinese Japanese types and dark-skinned European types. The public inquiry is examining the scandal in which the state-owned body hounded post office operators for more than a decade, alleging financial shortfalls in their branch accounts and criminally prosecuting hundreds of people. And now to Germany. The far-right Alternative für Deutschland party has lost the election in the German state of Brandenburg, according to initial results, 3 weeks after making historic gains in 2 other regions. In what had been framed as a referendum on the federal government of Olaf Scholz ahead of next autumn's general election, his Social Democratic Party, SPD, appeared at the 11th hour to have clawed back its lead over the anti-immigrant populists who had been on course for months to seize victory in the state for the first time. The SPD won 30.9% to the AfD's 29.2%, according to provisional official results by the state electoral commissioner, with both parties making gains of 5 to 6 points on their performance last time. The fledgling leftist conservative Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, BSW, a pro-Kremlin party, which has called for military aid to Ukraine to be halted, secured 12%, making it a likely contender in the new administration. With much considered to be at stake in the election, turnout was high at 74%. The SPD's Dietmar Woidke, who has led Brandenburg for 11 years, had upped the ante in the run-up to Sunday's poll by pledging to resign if the AfD beat his party in what was viewed as a high-stakes gamble based on his own popularity as, quote, father of the state. The AfD, which has been classified as a right-wing extremist organisation in Brandenburg by domestic intelligence agencies, had also called for Scholz to resign if the SPD lost. All eyes had been on Brandenburg, which is by population one of Germany's smallest states, after strong showings for the AfD earlier this month in Thuringia, where they came top with about 33%, and in Saxony, where they came a narrow second behind the conservative CDU with 27.5%. At the Brandenburg SPD's election gathering at a restaurant near the state parliament in Potsdam, there were cries of jubilation and relief as the initial results came in, following weeks of a highly strung campaign. The United States now and US congressional leaders have agreed to a short-term funding deal in a move that averts a damaging pre-election government shutdown and also amounts to a snub for Donald Trump. The prospect of a shutdown at the expiration of the current government funding on 30th of September had been looming after Republicans insisted on tying future funding to legislation that would require voters to show proof of US citizenship, known as the SAVE Act, backed by Trump but opposed by Democrats. After weeks of backroom maneuvering, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson announced a compromise that provides funding for another 3 months while decoupling it from the SAVE Act. Any other path would have been political malpractice, he added. The new package continues present spending levels while also giving $231 million in emergency funds to the beleaguered Secret Service to enable it to provide added protection for Trump, the Republican presidential nominee, who has been the subject of 2 failed apparent assassination attempts, as well as his Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris, before the presidential election on 5th of November. It represents a climb down for Johnson, who had previously adhered to Trump's demand that government funding be conditioned on passing the SAVE Act. The bill has become an article of faith for the former president and his supporters due to their belief, unsupported by evidence, that electoral fraud is rife. The temporary settlement, known as the continuing resolution, and which will have the effect of postponing haggling over spending until after the presidential election, was welcomed by Chuck Schumer, the Democratic Senate Majority Leader, who nevertheless said it could have been reached earlier. And in Scotland now, the Scottish Government has announced a consultation on proposals for a tax on developers, aiming to raise funds to fix building safety issues in Scotland. Views are being sought on the proposed Scottish Building Safety Levy, which will be introduced under powers due to be devolved by the UK Government later this year. The consultation opened today and will run for 8 weeks, closing on 18th of November. The levy would apply to the construction of new residential buildings, mirroring measures being introduced in England through the UK Building Safety Act. Funds raised would support the Scottish Government's cladding remediation programme. Finance Secretary Shona Robison said, "We're keen to hear from people across Scotland about our proposals, which would raise funds from developers to help safeguard people living in buildings with unsafe cladding. I know that developers share our determination to keep people safe and have continued to make significant progress. This legislation will build on that momentum, ensuring developers make a fair contribution to address building safety defects in Scotland, just as the UK Government is asking them to do in England. We are continuing our work in partnership with developers in line with our New Deal for Business and Framework for Tax to ensure this levy best contributes to our mission of keeping people safe." An AI-enabled smartphone app to help skin cancer patients is being developed by scientists at the University of Aberdeen, thanks to funding of £421,000 from Cancer Research UK. The app will help people previously treated for a type of skin cancer called melanoma examine their skin regularly to reduce anxiety and help catch any recurrence of the disease. A built-in AI chatbot will enable users to upload high-quality images and information about worrying skin changes, so concerns can be quickly triaged and dealt with by human healthcare professionals. The University of Aberdeen team has already successfully trialled a tablet app called ASICA with a group of patients who had previously been successfully treated for melanoma. Around 120 melanoma survivors used the app for a year to regularly check their skin and then send photos and text about any areas of concern to a specialist doctor for review. The app was found to be effective, leading to quicker resolution of concerns and reducing anxiety for users. However, some users struggle to maintain monthly skin checks and provide high-quality text and images for the specialists to view. The new funding will go towards developing an enhanced smartphone version of the ASICA app with an integrated AI chatbot which will better support users to check their skin monthly. Professor Peter Murchie, Chair in Primary Care and lead of the Academic Primary Care Research Group at the University of Aberdeen, said, "Melanoma can return, and we know the quicker recurrence is diagnosed, the more likely treatment is to be successful. If melanoma survivors check their total skin once per month, they are more likely to spot recurrence, or if a new melanoma has appeared. They can then get medical attention at the earliest stage. We believe this technology will not only be reassuring for patients, help them receive any treatment they need quickly, but also be more efficient, resulting in fewer NHS appointments, lower costs, and less travel for patients. AI will never replace the need for human healthcare professionals in diagnosing cancer, but can be of great support and reassurance for patients and in directing them to healthcare professionals when needed. Each year, around 17,500 people are diagnosed with melanoma skin cancer in the UK, with around 2,400 people in the UK sadly losing their lives to the disease annually. Cancer Research UK says that finding new ways to tackle the disease is vital. The Chief Constable in Scotland, Joe Farrell, has pledged that every community in Scotland will have identifiable local officers as part of an ambitious new vision for Police Scotland, as she unveiled key plans which outline how policing will evolve to meet existing and new challenges. The 2030 vision for policing sets key ambitions of safer communities, less crime, supported victims, and a thriving workforce, and is a 3-year business plan which outlines over 130 milestones Police Scotland aims to achieve by March 2027. Milestones include a new cyber and fraud division to tackle the growing demand of online crime, a refreshed commitment to what contact the public can expect from officers after reporting a crime, strengthen vetting and misconduct regulations to safeguard standards and integrity, a greater role for police staff in jobs that don't need policing powers, improving efficiency in back offices through greater use of AI and technology to automate paperwork. Chief Constable Joe Farrell said, "The reform of policing in Scotland removed £200 million from the annual cost base compared to legacy arrangements while improving service to the public. To strengthen the front line, reconnect with communities and respond to emerging threats when the outlook for public finances is challenging, we must progress to the next phase of police reform. Our vision and values set the guiding principles and ambitions for policing, and our business plan details the steps we are taking to deliver for our communities and our workforce." Staying in Scotland, and Scotland has been chosen for the third time to lead a global climate action network. The Under 2 Coalition, the largest network of subnational governments committed to reaching net zero emissions by 2050 or earlier. The Under 2 Coalition builds collaborative relationships as part of a wide range of international engagement, including the Clean Heat Forum, which provides an opportunity for governments, NGOs and industry to align ambitions on decarbonising heat and buildings. First Minister John Swinney will hold the role of European co-chair on behalf of the Scottish Government. Speaking at the start of Scotland's Climate Week, which will run from the 23rd to the 29th of September, the First Minister said, "Scotland may be a small country, but we have big ambitions when it comes to climate change. I am proud that we have been re-elected as European co-chair of the Under 2 Coalition for a third term, reflecting the important role of states and regions like Scotland in driving global climate action." The Scottish Government is already taking forward a range of policy actions to help us reach our target date for net zero emissions of all greenhouse gases by 2045. These include accelerating our renewable energy generation ambitions and reducing emissions from our homes and buildings through clean heat and improved energy efficiency, he continued. But we know Scotland will not reach net zero without public support. That's why this Climate Week, the campaign will be focused on stories for change, demonstrating how taking climate action is not only good for our planet, but for us too. This is a decisive decade for climate change. All of us have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make changes, however big or small, that will be good for our people, our communities, our economy, and our planet. And staying on Scotland and climate, Climate Week New York City inspires, amplifies, and scrutinises the commitments, policies, and actions of those with the power to make change happen, while pushing the transition into the mainstream of business and government, showing what can be achieved. Climate Week NYC's overall message this year is "It's time", celebrating those driving climate action, challenging everyone to do more, and exploring ways to increase ambition. Ministers from Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland met to discuss the need to deliver urgent action on climate change in the three nations, the importance of ensuring a just transition to net zero, and the critical importance of working together towards our shared UK-wide goals. While each nation faces different challenges and will have their own priorities, the twin imperatives to act now and to act fairly means embracing the benefits of collective action. Ministers reaffirmed their commitment to share knowledge and experience to help each other make progress on reducing emissions, creating climate resilience, and working together to create the conditions for real, lasting, and fair change across the three nations. Ministers are looking forward to working with the new UK government ministerial team to further drive climate action across the UK. Deputy First Minister Hugh Hiranka-Davis represented the Welsh Government, and Andrew Muir, Minister of Agriculture, Environment and Rural Affairs, represented the Northern Ireland Executive. Representing Scotland, Acting Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero and Energy, Julian Martin, said, "It is time to move from ambition to action, and I am honoured to be here to further build influence of devolved states and regional governments within the international climate debate, all whilst having a strong focus on capacity building. I believe devolved administrations can learn from each other as we accelerate a just transition to net zero." There was a real impetus amongst us all today to continue these conversations ahead of COP29. Scotland has a unique opportunity as Under 2 European co-chair and Regions 4 president to continue championing other subnational governments. And to end tonight, my usual reminder that at Broadcasting Scotland we depend on the generosity of our supporters. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter. To everyone who has donated, and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. Right now, we urgently need to increase our donations if we are to be able to pay our bills. We face costs of over £4,000 every month, but our income is just over £2,500 a month, and we are now facing mounting debts. Please donate whatever you can afford. Thank you tonight for watching. I hope the stories provided some inspiration for discussion, and please join us again on Broadcasting Scotland tomorrow. Goodbye and good night.